This is 2 Minutes About Time with Luke Allen and Robert E.G. Black, the podcast that takes a look at the film About Time 2 minutes at a time. I am Richard Curtis, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't, well, you can just travel back in time 2 minutes and listen to something else.
I'm one of your hosts, Luke Allen. I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Robert E.G. Black.
Hello, hello.
And with our special guest for this week, Steve Mortimore.
Hi, hello.
So, Steve, to those who don't know who you are you able to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm a film location manager and scout, and I was the location manager for the film About Time back in 2012 when we filmed it. Normally, I'm the first person on the film. You work with the script and the director and the designer, and you just come up with a load of options to film at, making sure that you can logistically make them work as well as afford them, and then you manage it throughout the film.
Yeah, and obviously About Time, this is the perfect point to have you on. And thanks so much for coming to do this, because I realised I think I just gave you like a random call last week and was like... You did.
Which I thought it was a hope call first.
What did you think of the idea of this format of a show? I'd imagine it's probably odd, or were you aware of this idea before?
Odd. Yeah, no, odd is definitely the thought at first. But I know that the film is a cult film, or has become a cult film. I mean, often I'm about to switch off, I flick through the channel, and there it is. It pops up again, and I find myself watching it. It's hard to turn off. And I'm someone that's, that worked on it, and it's just an enjoyable film. It's feel good, and it makes you feel good, and so no, I can kind of understand why that maybe you've chosen this film.
Mm. It's been my favourite film for a while, and I remember talking to Robert about it. Robert's done loads of these shows with different films. This is my first one, so as soon as GCSEs were cancelled, I got in touch with Robert and I was like, shall we do About Time? And next minute, we're basically finished, and I don't know what's happened. I mean, this won't be till one of...
It's the last proper one. We're going to do a couple,
couple
finale
bonus,
sort of things with other people we're still thinking about, but yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so today we're looking at, hang on, I forgot what number minutes we're looking at. What number minutes we're looking at, Robert?
It'd be 118 and 119.
118 and 119, here we go. Wherein it's the end credits. Well, we get a brief shot at the start, which we touched on
we got that last minute.
Last episode with Aisling, because, it was just a bit odd to skip this. So we just get the see you later while they're on the shot there. I mean, we talked about how that shot was directed by Emma Freud because Richard was ill at that point. Incidentally, a note as to what we've been talking about on the show a few times. Emma's got back to us about the fact Scarlett Curtis being one of the pictures at the wedding and being the one that Tim went all the way with. She's since told us that they gave the prop designer a load of pictures. He didn't realise that the one that was supposed to be the girl that Tim went all the way with was actually Richard Curtis's daughter. So... It's nice.
It's funnier than every option we came up with so far.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out why did they choose that? So we didn't think that is brilliant. But yeah, so we got How Long Will I Love You begins straight after the See You Later
and
cut to black.
And the end on the screen.
The end appears on the screen. Good point. I mean, actually, I guess before we go into all of this, Steve, so what was your specific experience with About Time and getting on board with that?
Yeah, it was, as I said, it was 2012. The Olympics were in London. I got a call about the film, went in and met the producers, read the script, met the designer, and thought, this is a fun film. I asked them about the London filming, and they said, don't worry, we will not be planning to film in London when the Olympics is on. And of course we did.
Yeah. Abbey Road, we were looking at the security camera footage from then, and that looked like that was a manic shoot.
That was...
While the Olympics is going on.
And then cut the scene.
Yeah, that was good fun. They cut the scene. It's funny because they normally have a cast and crew about a week before the sort of scheduled release of the film, but I don't generally go to them because they're about 10:30 on a Sunday morning. So I like to go and watch it with the family, so they can have a bit of a debrief just to sort of see what I've been through the last 6, 9, 12 months of my life. So we went to Maida Vale, Everyman, and that scene was about to come, and I remember thinking what a headache it was to close Abbey Road. And then it wasn't there. And I had this big sigh, and everyone in the cinema must have thought, what the hell is he sighing about? What's his problem? But they didn't know the amount of the weeks and weeks I put in to do it. And And actually, at the end of the first take, it rained so much we had to reschedule it and come back again and do it. Yeah,
it's a beautiful deleted scene, though. It's really funny.
I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really good. It was hard work, to close that. It was funny because we weren't legally allowed to close the zebra crossing, but we could close the road. That was Westminster for you at the time, but we managed to still make it work. No, I thought it was a good scene, and I was looking forward to it as well. But for what a reason it wasn't there. That happened. But go back to the Olympics. I mean, in the end, it was easy because no one quite knew what the Olympics was going to throw up. And I remember contacting all the authorities, and everyone advised, do not film in London. Do not film. Do not film. But then as I looked into it, I couldn't see a reason not to do it. And because of Rachel McAdams' dates, we had no choice. We had to film at this time, and it turned out to be easy. A lot easier than if it wasn't the Olympics. Everyone had left, and it was a doddle. So.
Yeah, there are just some lovely, I think one of the main things genuinely that does stand out in the film are the locations. Because all I want to do, especially the Cornwall stuff, it just makes me want to go to Cornwall. I've actually never been, to be honest, but...
you haven't? Wow. No, it was great. Yeah. It's always harder to film in Cornwall. The roads are a bit smaller. There's lots of people there in the summer. The beach at the house was not the beach that we used. It was called Vault Beach. It was about a 30-minute drive away.
Did I read that it was a naturist beach as well?
I think it could have been. Yeah, that rings a bell. But we must have scouted about 30 beaches, but Richard really wanted to use that one. I tried to put him off because it was a 20-minute walk down a cliff to get to the beach. There was no other way of doing it. And quite often you have gators and 4x4s, but at the top of there, you unload the equipment and you just have manpower and you had to walk 20 minutes down. And I knew that it was going to be hard work. That day we shot must have been about 28 degrees on that beach. We were depicting a winter scene. It was hard work. And of course everyone wrapped and they just leave and you've got to get all the equipment up. And it was hard work. I just ran in the sea afterwards to cool down.
Yeah, the house looks beautiful on video. The one thing that surprised me when looking at behind the scenes stuff is that the house was painted pink.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that at all in the final cut of the film.
Yeah, no, the designer, John Paul, just looked at the house and said, I think it'll look great in pink. Showed a sketch to Richard and he agreed and that was it. We painted it. And then we had to paint it back again to its original colour afterwards, of course.
Yeah, I think one of the other things with that as well is, wasn't there one room in the house, Robert, that you couldn't figure out where it was?
Where they play ping pong.
That was in the house, yeah, that was there. There was a what was it? It was like a potting shed or something at the back, if I remember rightly.
Okay, so it's in a separate thing. I have the floor plans of the house itself, and I'm like, it's not in there.
That was it. No, you're right. It wasn't actually part of the house. It was meant to feel like it, but there was a potting shed that was full of junk, and we had to rip all the junk out. It was perfect. We got the table in there, but yeah, it was just adjacent to it, sort of by the greenhouse at the back of the house.
It's a lovely room. So, yeah, I guess before we go back into the minute, there was one other location I remember, Robert, you saying you didn't get. The restaurant.
House. Okay. The restaurant where Tim and Charlotte eat, because we don't see the outside of it. We didn't see the outside of it, so that didn't bother me too much. Tim and Mary's house, we see the front of, 3 times, and we see the address, and I still couldn't find it.
Yeah, that was...
I looked at streets on Google Earth around Notting Hill and Hyde Park, where a bunch of the other locations were, one block at a time.
It's you're a bit too south. It was a little bit more north than that. That was a hard search. I remember having a few scouts, and we must have looked at about 40, 50 houses, if I remember rightly. And then there was one house. In practical terms, it was probably a little bit too small, but we made it work. And all I can say is that it belonged to a 1990s trip hop artist, but I won't say who he is. And it was fantastic. We were there for 3 months, I think it was. I sort of moved him from the family into a local hotel. And, we did a lot of painting, decorating, props and everything. And we were there for quite a while. About a month, I think it was, afterwards. Filming, sort of back and forward.
Do people in houses tend to be pretty keen to have their houses used on film, from your experience? Or do you often have to try and persuade people, or what's the situation with that?
Absolutely, no. I get emails all the time from people, offering up their houses. Pretty unusual to get anyone decline you. I remember having a stately home decline me once many years ago. But in general, everyone's very keen for it. You get paid quite well for it. There is inconvenience. I mean, on that particular house, they all had to move into a hotel, into Marriott Hotel. I tell you where it was. It was Queen's Park area. Queen's Park.
There you go. Because I'd imagine that probably less risk with this film, but I'd imagine with larger scale stuff, people also have the risk of people wanting to come and visit and wanting to look at the house as fans and stuff.
Yes, absolutely. That happens a lot. With locations. Some locations have done incredibly well. I mean, if you think about Alnwick Castle on Harry Potter and Highclere on Downton Abbey, those places have done incredibly well on the back of filming. There was a Popeye film in the 90s that built a set on the island of Malta and is still there as a tourist attraction.
Yep. Yeah,
they left it. They left it up. Wolf Kruger built it.
So I guess if you have to be a resident in a house that's been a film location, I guess if you're moving into a house there, I guess you sort of have to be aware that you're probably going to have fans knocking on the door or whatever saying, "Can I take photos? I know I read a while ago the woman who owns one of the houses from Gavin and Stacey, it lets in thousands of people a year to just look around the house and
do an open house tour or something. It'd be great, wouldn't it? If it was a well-known house. Yeah. It's, there are lots of places that are used over and over again because it's about logistics. I have to put two hats on. You put the creative hat at the first when you're scouting. You're trying to tick all the boxes, but then as soon as that's done, you've got to logistically make it work. Make sure it's got the space, the parking, neighbours. If you're on a house every day, you need to make sure that the neighbours are happy with it. If you pull up outside at 6 o'clock in the morning or something, yeah, there's quite a bit of work that goes into it. It's not that straightforward, but these are things that we know that we have to do, and there's a list that we work through, me and my team, each time we do a film. But about time, everything went right. You need a bit of luck. There's only so much you can do. If suddenly the council decide to dig up a road or a building needs to be knocked down or something like that, that's completely out of your hands. But I must admit, everything just seemed to work on this film. It was good karma, that.
Mm. I say it's one of those things which has always interested me. Just from, obviously I'm coming from an amateur filmmaking perspective rather than anything else, but it's all, I seem to be in that sort of mindset now. Wherever I go, it's like, could I use this in something? Could I use that? And obviously when I'm not in a position to be able to pay people to use their houses and stuff, it's going to be more difficult, but I think it must be a very exciting mindset to have. Do you tend to find out that the more out and about you are, the more you think, need to remember that place for...
Absolutely. For I was out with a friend once, we met in the park, and then she came back to my house, and she followed me in the car, and when we got back, she said to me, do you realise all you're doing is looking out the window, you're just looking from left to right, you're just looking... I said, no, I was just thinking about the street, I thought it'd be quite good for something. And films, it's very hard. When I read a script, I don't really get into the story that much. I skim the story. All I'm thinking about is the creative locations and the logistics. Are they really going to shoot that in Cornwall? Because quite often you'll read a script and it'll say, is in Istanbul. So my note is, are we going to Istanbul or have I got to find out within the M25?
Am I right that the script was originally Scotland for About Time?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Yeah. That rings a bell, but I'm not 100% just sure. So it was a little while ago. That does ring a bell though, yeah.
So as we go through the credits before we get any of the locations, we got written and directed by Richard Curtis, produced by Tim Barron, Eric Fellner, Nikki Kentish-Barnes, executive producer Richard Curtis, Lisa Chassin, Amelia Granger. I'm worried in reading this I'm going to end up messing someone's name up. Associate producer Emma Freud. And then we get the first shot, which is of Vault Beach. And it's weird how beautifully it does seem like it is the beach from the back of the house. It's really convincing. And does that kind of ruin films for you when you watch it and you know that these locations aren't... with About Time, for the most part, you did really well in having the locations within, the right distance of each other, I think.
Yeah.
The only comment you made, Robert, wasn't it, that there were other train stations closer?
There are better train stations.
To their flat, but
as opposed to Maida Vale, you mean?
Well, look-wise, it's a great station. It's simple. It's got that nice little opening in the middle. Great escalators, but it's not the closest to any of the locations.
No, it's not. It's not. And I don't live too far away myself. I live in North London, and over the years, there's two train stations that people tend to film at all the time. One's Charing Cross, There's like a secret closed platform that, James Bond filmed that once in Mission Impossible, because you go through a door at the bottom of Charing Cross, you don't know it's there, and there's at the bottom of the escalator, there's a door and there's a platform. I think it was Jubilee Line. It's been closed for 10 years or so. And the other one is the Aldwych one, which is a bit older. It's a bit tired, and there's no escalator. You have to walk down 300 steps, so people try and avoid that one. And when you film in a live station, you have to work within the restrictions, and generally that's what, you can't change it. Whatever time the last train that leaves there, whether it's 11:30 p.m. or midnight, that's when you can start. Sometimes let you do some minimal preparation, but because of health and safety, you need to wait. And then as soon as the last train goes, you close up and it's yours until the first train. And I've always liked it. And I remember
it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's very ornate. It's got a very nice, all the tiles. And I just went there, took pictures, showed it to Richard and John Paul, and they said it was great. And I think it works really well. That was the entire night just spent listening to that song on loop over and over. And suddenly the first train was like 6:30, so at 6 o'clock we were all coming up the stairs, the escalators, bringing equipment, and I never wanted to hear that song again.
So I guess as well, one of the fascinating things is when we get to Joanna's flat, like the location is said in the lines, isn't it?
Yeah.
She names the actual location. So is that something which you find the location and then they add that line into the film, or did they write that?
Yeah.
First?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, remind me, Joanna, is that Margot Robbie?
Vanessa Kirby.
Vanessa Kirby.
Vanessa Kirby. I can't remember where was her flat now.
It's only in one scene. It's after Tim goes back in the art gallery. He then goes back again to Joanna's flat where he meets Mary again for the first time. And I think what you said, Robert, is that did you say the interior was different to the exterior as well, Robert?
The balcony they show from the outside is a different balcony than they shoot on.
Sorry. Yeah. Absolutely. Sorry. Where the party was at the start. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, that was when I found that in Earl's Court. When I first moved up to London 20 odd years ago, I lived in the street behind, Coleman Place, and that was the next street. Richard and John Paul were saying they wanted a sort of corner flat with a big room to have this party, and literally I just drove up and down the streets. I thought that would be a good place, and I was fortunate that I found this flat right on the corner, and that was where we shot that, right on the corner. I forget the street. It's the one forward from Coleman Place in Earl's Court.
Yeah, and one of the I realise I'm just going through different locations here, but one of the other ones that really sort of stood out to me that I found fascinating. There we go.
What?
I had to scroll up in my notes. It's 26 Courtfield Gardens.
Courtfield Gardens, that's the one. Courtfield Gardens, yeah. Lovely. I mean, it worked a treat. It was lovely. It was owned by. It was being rented by a French couple at the time, and they were back and forwards, and we had it for about a week, I think it was. And no, it worked a treat with the balcony and everything. And then is there a taxi that pulls off? I think it was great. But that was again, it was difficult. We filmed there till about 4 a.m, I think it was. So you're trying to have a party but keep it quiet. So I remember it was tough trying to keep everyone a bit quiet at 3:30 in the morning. But yeah, we did it. It was all good.
Yeah, I think one of the other ones which I found fascinating was when I realised that the church that was involved for the wedding is the same church from Keeping Mum.
Absolutely, because I did that as well.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Because it's weird because I love both those films, but it wasn't until we did this that I made the connection, and I was like, oh yeah, they're the same church. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful church building.
Oh, it's lovely. The village is called St. Michael Pencavel, and I can't remember the year, like 2003 or 2 or something. Keeping Mum, Patrick Swayze, Chris Scott Thomas. So I think it was a great film. Black comedy. And
favourite film of one of the Shining twins, apparently. I did an interview with the Shining twins, and I can't remember which one it was, but she said it was her favourite film.
Great. I mean, it was great. I mean, I couldn't believe it when they said Patrick Swayze, grown up with Dirty Dancing. And he was absolutely charming. Actually, I mean, we were in this village in Cornwall. It was before smartphones, really. And, I just said, look, there's a lot of people would love to get a photo of you and all that. And he said, sure, fine. And we finished about midnight, I think it was, on a rainy winter. And he just stayed around and got a photo with everyone. And I was trying to clear up, get the lights off. But no, he was charming, absolutely charming, man.
So with churches, do some churches have issues if there's, with the theme of the script, or if there's any bad language? Do there tend to be problems with that?
Yeah, churches are difficult. Look, I love giving money to churches. Schools, hospitals, and churches. I mean, when I see them in the script, never cut back on the fees. Always try and give them a bit more if I can of other fees, because it was good. It's good to give money to those locations. Churches, need money just like everyone else, and it's great. So we filmed the exterior of that scene, the wedding in Port Low, I think it was, outside the Lugger, like there. And then the interior, we couldn't find anything quite right. And then I remembered from Keeping Mum, that was a great church. So we showed that to Richard and he loved it. That was good. But yeah, you got to be very careful. I mean, I feel like I did the Kingsman film. Have you seen that? That was a film I did.
Yeah.
Quite how you describe that scene we did in the church. But yeah.
It's a bit of everything really, isn't it?
I think. And they were going to build it because I just couldn't really find a church that would accept that. But that was a military, understandably. But that was a military, flat pack church, which it was, I think it was built in Romania, something like that. And they brought it back to the home counties here. And it was just used for counselling. So it wasn't, it wasn't a church with services or anything. And we were able, I think we took that for 3 months, I think it was, with the stunt rehearsals and everything else. There weren't many churches that would allow that to.
I mean, I did a tiny bit of filming for one of my things in a church graveyard, and that was a lot of discussing and emailing and arranging with the vicar. Like, I know the vicar, because it's a church that we held, a charity that I work with at, and it was just, he was fine on concept, but it was a lot of the, what are the themes with it, how are you going to film it, make sure that, I mean, graveyard's obviously harder because you can't close off a graveyard, really.
Very difficult, very difficult. Yeah, no, I filmed in a few, and quite often they there's always a scene in there where they want to, dig a hole or something. I mean, you just have to be very careful about it. But, if you put notices up, and let people know, and the fact that you're making a payment to the church, I mean, generally, it's all worked out fine in the end, from experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's brilliant because I hope this is really fascinating to listeners, because I feel like there are so many jobs on a film set that people don't think about. And, I mean, I can't think of many more fascinating than locations, really, but I think it's definitely one that people kind of forget.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I mean, I still enjoy it. I've been doing it for 25 years. And the beauty of it is that every script generally is different, although I've done a couple of superhero films recently, and it's quite often you read similar lines. They're not that creative, unfortunately. But, films like About Time and, Keeping Mum, I mean, it was just such an unusual story, wasn't it,
Yeah. You haven't yet seen it, have you?
No, I have not.
Yeah, it was a really good film. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So on the credits, we've got our shot of Vault Beach, where we then get the credit for Tom Hollander. I find it interesting but understanding that we get the credits for Donal, Rachel and Bill at the start of the film, and then not among the rest of the cast at this point. Like, I know that's in quite a few films, but it always sort of takes me by surprise. Is that something either of you had thought about, really?
No, I think it's just contractual agreements. There's all sorts of unusual agreements with certain actors, after. I imagine it's that.
Then we get our credit for Lindsay Duncan, Margot Robbie, which we talked about before, like, getting her literally months before Wolf of Wall Street, like, it was a bit. Yeah. The casting director on this, I haven't actually checked who it is, but I assume we probably get their credit today, do we?
Is it Lucy Bevan? Is it? I don't know. Or
hang on, I've got the Blu-ray case right in front of me. Probably says it on here.
Yeah.
Fiona Weir.
Fiona Weir. There we go.
Oh, Fiona Weir.
Getting Margot Robbie and Vanessa Kirby and Tom Hughes, like, these are people who made it really big after this. I think it is brilliant with some of these things, that you managed to, well, obviously not you specifically, but the casting people managed to cast people who make it big. And I mean, I think it's one of the biggest hopes, I'd imagine, for a writer or a director, the idea that maybe if their film doesn't do that well upon release, that one of the actors will make it big and you become a cult success. So the next location shot that we get is of the station, once again, which we've talked about. We seem to have done a lot of this 118
which is the same shot as minute 52, but it starts earlier in this time.
Yeah.
The shot of them going up the escalators.
brilliant spot, but that's a good level of prep you've done. So we get the credit for Lydia Wilson. I mean, I guess at this point, it's worth naming who these people play to those who don't know at this point. Lydia Wilson is Kit Kat. Richard Caudry is credited after that alongside Josh Maguire. Richard is Desmond and Joshua Maguire is Rory. Then we get Tom Hughes and Vanessa Kirby, which is another, Tom Hughes, I think we talked about both of them quite a lot, but we've got Jimmy and Joanna. Interesting that Jimmy gets credited before Joanna, right? It could be a contractual thing.
It's a contract thing. There's a weirder one in the next pair.
Will Merrick and Lisa, who is Lisa Acorn?
Right?
Oh, hang on, I think I read this. Is it the mum?
It is Mary's mum, yeah.
What an odd choice.
Who is Will Merrick 2 scenes and has like 3 lines.
Yeah. Will Merrick is Jay, and Lisa Acorn is the mother, yeah. Because that's always the name that I have to second think every time. So then we fade out to a shot of them going downstairs from the house at this point. So is this the other beach?
Yeah, I believe that's the house. Yeah, so that's the actual house, and that's the beach at the house, which is very different. Yeah, it's a small private beach. I mean, it's very nice, but it's not cinematic small beach.
If this isn't, and they showed this earlier in the film, if this isn't like a digital composite, the ramp has been changed a lot in the 8 years since. Because the ramp now is this big stone thing that looks like it's made for crowds.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, the truth is I can't remember what it looked like unless I go back and look at my old recce pictures, but I think it is a composite. I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah. That just doesn't look normal to me.
And so I guess the next question is, how about that house?
Wow.
What a house.
Yeah. What a house. What a house. I mean, it's a rental. It's funny, every job's different, but when you go somewhere like that and you need a house of this scale, you just look at rentals. You go onto the agencies, look at the big houses, especially in Cornwall. I mean, there's plenty of them. And it was just one that I found on a rental. And I mean, there was a few others in contention, but this was all the winner. I mean, it was just, it just ticked every box. It really did. I mean, it's a very, very special place.
I say, well, I whenever I look at it, I just want to go there, and then I look at the price to rent it, and it's like, that's not going to happen. But I mean, one thing which I have sort of semi-joked, but I'm genuinely wondering, with doing this show, I'm tempted, if I manage to go to Cornwall anytime soon, to just email them and say, like, can we look around for half an hour?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably unlikely, but I always say you don't ask, you don't get. So.
Absolutely. No, I think it'd be fine. If I'll give you the contact details after this, and I'm sure it'll be.
Yeah, I'll save that down, and then as soon as lockdown finishes, I'll see whether I can persuade my family to take a weekend away at some point. Because it does just seem so wonderful. And I know some of the rooms in there seem to be slightly shifted around, like the dad's office was the main dining room and stuff. But
yeah, I think we spent a good 3 weeks before. I can't remember my rent, but it was something like a 3-month rental of the house in total. And I got a feeling we spent a good 3 months, wallpapering, painting, and getting it all up and ready, and then after you've got it dressed, you've got to put the lighting in and everything, then do rehearsals. Maybe it's 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. And then afterwards you film, you've got to put it all back again, as it was.
So do you never have it where they go, I'll keep it? or are you not allowed?
Sometimes that happens. Often they regret it. And there's not a lot, they can do about it. Sometimes after, I always say, look, live with it for a week. Talk to me later, because sometimes they say, oh, this is fine, I want to do this. And then a couple of weeks later, they're like, oh, actually, no, I've changed my mind. Can I, then it's always awkward then. Do
you know the Tom Hanks film Money Pit from the 80s?
No,
I was watching that recently, and I looked up this thing about it, and the owner of the house, they destroy the house during the movie. The owner of the house, when she got back, didn't know they'd done that. She didn't know they destroyed it until she saw the movie, because they fixed it up so nice after.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
She saw the movie and was in shock. She's like, what did you do to my house? They knocked down a staircase. They put holes in the floors, the walls.
Oh my gosh. That would be a shock, wouldn't it?
Do the owners of locations, I mean, obviously in that case not, but I mean, do the owners of the buildings often get the chance to see the script or stuff?
Yeah, well, sometimes they insist, quite often. If you're dealing with an institution, hotel or something, or a private house, they always insist, and you have to send them a copy of the script, or just the script pages, a watermarked version of it, get them to sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, because they just want to make sure that you're not depicting it in a way that they feel is not correct.
Because I did find it attract weird people to their house later.
Yeah, which that happened on one of the locations on this film. I can tell you, right? It was the theatre scene. So Richard wanted to film it at the Royal Court Theatre, Sloane Square. And, I mean, what a fantastic scene that was. I mean, it was so funny, with Richard Griffiths, wasn't it, and Richard E. Grant.
Yeah.
And they asked to see the script pages, and the creative director came back and said, well, there's no way that anyone at this theatre would forget their line.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a joke, it's a film.
That's what they take out of it?
And, and I took out a few other films, that I've worked on. It's the first time anyone ever said it. Anyway, in the end, they said no. They were absolutely adamant that they didn't want to depict the theatre as other actors that forget their lines. So, I called around and lucky we got the old Vic. Yeah, the old Vic. They just happened to be dark because it's very hard. Theatre years ago, back in the 90s and noughties, it was so easy to film at theatres, but these days it's buzzing. I mean, it's so hard to get you used to have a choice of dark theatres back in the days, but it's very hard. But we were very lucky. I think it was the only one available at the time within it, because our schedule then was all set, and I mean, it worked great. I mean, it was fantastic, and I think it was a really good scene. And no one at the old Vic has subsequently, forgotten any lines. I don't think.
Maybe it reminded them. Maybe the film gives the actors the extra push.
They show them that scene before they go in.
Yeah. This could happen.
But yeah, I mean, I think it is fascinating, and I think the main thing is, when looking at pictures from the house, from the main house from About Time, it is like when you see that the dad's study is the main dining room. Part of me wonders, do you think they could have attracted? I mean, I assume they're doing pretty well for business anyway. But do you think they could have attracted more fans if it had stayed as?
They'd have kept it like it. Yeah, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. It could have, yeah. I mean, I guess at the time they didn't know. It's very hard because all the dressing we do is generally hired props.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the majority of everything on a film set is hired, or unless it's a specific. Sometimes they go and buy them. So afterwards, they keep them, they hold them over just in case they need to go back and do some more reshoots, and then they're back to the hire shops around the North Circular. So it'd be very hard to keep it. They could have replicated it and copied it. That may have been a sort of rights issue as well with the film, I would imagine.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure I haven't seen, but I'm sure there's something on the website that says that it was used.
I think there's something, yeah. I checked a while ago.
Yeah. I'd imagine it's there. I did speak to the owner only last year, actually. He called me last year. We just had a little chat. I haven't spoken to him for a while. Yeah, no, it was, I can't imagine it being in another house. I mean, if I think of the other houses that we shortlisted, I mean, I don't think it would have been, anything close to how good that house ended up as.
So we get the shot of the beach. We then get credit for, I missed one? We get production designer first. I thought it was editor first. We get,
photography first.
Oh yeah, we didn't do DOP last, sorry, I went straight into 119. Robert, I don't want to mess up the DOP's surname.
Yeah.
I would guess Gulasarian?
Gulasarian, that sounds good, yep.
John Gulasarian.
He was John, yeah, he was American. I think he was LA based, I think so. He came over.
Well, yeah, the name sounds sort of Armenian, and I live in Glendale, which is lots of Armenians, so.
Oh, okay. No, great. I mean, he was perfect for it, John. It's different that I've worked with a whole number of DOPs, and but he was definitely the right man for that job. Very quick, a lot of handheld, doesn't mess about, just gets the shot done and moved on, and it just looked real. I thought he did a wonderful job of it.
Oh yeah, it does look beautiful, and we've talked quite a lot about with the shots that level of handheld, the way that in a beautiful way, it's some of the more intimate things feel like you're watching someone filming it with like a camcorder, so you really feel sort of invested in it. And I think almost the whole film is handheld or looks handheld. Yeah. So it really has that lovely intimate feel.
I've got this memory of John with the camera on his shoulder all the time, just literally his shoulder walking around. I mean, he operated himself most of the time, I think.
So we've got the production designer after. So in fact, with John, I believe, I could be wrong, I can't remember what the film was either, that Richard Curtis said he wanted the film to be shot in a similar way to this other film, and that other film was one that John had done.
Oh, I can't remember that.
I'm going to have to check now. It was quite a little known one, I think.
Was it?
Just see whether I can find it. I feel like, I don't think it was even on a commentary. I think it was an interview I'd heard it, so it'll be really... Like Crazy. That was it. Like Crazy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't remember that. Cannot remember that.
Because admittedly, because of this show, we have so much of this little snippet stuff where I'd imagine, even because I know Richard and Emma listen, I'd imagine some points of this they'll have forgotten things that they've said.
Oh yeah.
That we then quote back at them. We get the production designer John Paul Kelly, and I mean we've talked quite a bit about like the designer stuff, and it's a beautiful design of a film. Before we move on to editor Mark Day, once again I feel like we're just reading their names and saying they did a good job. But shout out to you, Mark Day. Robert, is going to be a real tough job when we get to the rest of the credits. Just Graham Curry again, by the way, guys. Yeah. Graham Curry. Oh yeah, just for random things, Steve. We ended up becoming weirdly obsessed with this one extra in a scene that we couldn't figure out who it was. We thought it was a guy called Graham Curry. I've since found Graham Curry's number on IMDb Pro, phoned him up. It's not Graham Curry, but we
spent an hour insisting it was Graham Curry and talking about him.
Yeah, so I'm glad I got in contact with the actual Graham Curry, so he knows there's an entire episode dedicated to him wherein we don't actually talk about him. But that's the sort of weird stuff that we seem to have on this show. But yeah, I mean, the question is who on earth do we get in touch with to find out who that one extra was? Because although it's stupid,
all the other extras.
Why did we get so obsessed, Robert? I can't remember.
It's funny. There is an extra story. Not that particular extra, but when we were filming in Cornwall, we were there for a few weeks and filming, and there was a restaurant, a really nice restaurant in I can't think where it was, Foy, I think it was. And I went there on Sunday with my family. Richard came in with his family, and we had a nice meal. He was at the other end, and anyway, it was a really nice restaurant. When I came back to London and we did the London filming, we did that scene in Pret a Manger.
Yes, this is we heard about it.
And you've heard it. Okay, have you spoke about it already?
I'm not sure, but please carry on. just so I get.
No, and it was just weird. We were filming. Richard said he wanted to film in Pret a Manger, so we got in contact with them. It took a while, and anyway, we ended up, because we were filming in the Royal Courts of Justice, that we used the one opposite. And we were setting up prep, and there was the girl in the uniform, and I was like, where is she from? I know her. I just know this girl. I couldn't think what it was, and then found out that when Richard left the restaurant, he asked the girl on the reception of the restaurant to come up and be in the prep scene.
It's a wonderful story. Incidentally, Richard, if you're listening, me and Robert are both up for being extras. Get in touch. Email in.
Well, next time he's
to get a job
in California.
Need to get a job in a Cornwall pub restaurant.
That's the key.
Yeah. But she was very sweet, and she was excellent. I don't know if she's done any acting at all before, but I just thought she was again. He spotted her, and she was absolutely perfect. And
it's a beautiful thing we get with that as well, because we talked about how that was shot. How when he lives today the first time, we sort of see the side profile of her or the back of her head. And then when he's noticing the little things, we get a big close up on her face. It's just, it's really, really well done. Oh yeah, well Robert, at least now you know where the Pret a Manger was as well, because wasn't that another one? And I think the only other one I remember, as we said, was the restaurant where Charlotte and Tim ate at.
Would you like to guess, or shall I just tell you? Is that the one where they meet after the theatre, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Ping Pong on South Bank.
Ah, there we go. How did you mention that, Robert?
We had to, generally we're filming, you need an anchor with someone. They're trying to squeeze an X amount of scenes, and the anchor was the South Bank, and I can't remember, we were there for 2 or 3 nights. And because of actors' availability and everything else, we did the scene where she asked him to go back to her apartment, where he refuses. That was in the White House apartment, which is right opposite the National Theatre.
So they are actually apartments. We were
in the White House. That was one of the ones on my list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we weren't sure whether it was apartment or hotel, were we? That was one of our other discussions.
It's funny. It does look like a hotel.
The hallway looks like a hotel.
Yeah, it's right opposite, and it just worked out well. And then the first AD said, "Look, I'd love to slip in." We were at National Theatre. We were in that lobby, with the jazz band playing. And then he said, "Look, it'd be really good if we can do this restaurant scene there." And there was a few restaurants, but Ping Pong, which is like an Asian restaurant, we shot upstairs there.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, one of the other locations we talked about quite a lot was the Greek restaurant, because you found out, Robert, that it was really unhygienic, didn't you?
Yes.
That it got closed down for, yeah.
Sorbas. Yeah, that was Lancaster Gate. Sorbas. No, I think Richard said that he went on a first date with Emma in a Greek restaurant or something like that. So that was why he wrote that in. And we just, we looked at a few of them, and that was the one that Richard thought was closest. Yeah, we needed to give it a clean.
It's a great corner location too. It's a nice visual.
Yeah, it's lovely. Really nice. Yeah. I mean, we did a bit of work on the lights. I remember being there for, 2 days. I think we took it for 4 days, and we it's amazing that you see these locations, but you have to add in. In fact, I remember on that particular one, having to put 32 amp power in, because we had to up it to get all the lights there. But yeah, it looks simple, but it just opposite the Hempel Hotel, West London. Yeah, that's lovely. Really nice. So, I can't comment on the hygiene. I don't know anything about that.
I think
it's okay. We went into detail.
Yeah, there was. You found a full list of wasn't it like rodents and other things that it got closed down for? So it was. Yeah, it was. I think if I remember correctly, we both had interesting facts about it, and I very quickly found out that Robert's fact was so much more interesting than mine. We then get the line producer, Tori Parry, credited while we're still on the other shot. I mean, I guess through the fact that the film is a good film, the line producing is done well.
The line producing is the nuts and bolts.
To comment on, is there? Yeah.
It's the nuts and bolts of the film. You have to oversee more about the money and the crew, really, making it all work. But it's not an easy job.
And then we fade out and back into Maida Vale Station.
Yep.
So yeah, at least canonically in the film, the Maida Vale Station is Maida Vale Station.
Yeah.
Which is nice to know.
We just.
Oh, sorry, you carry on.
I was just saying, we just shot that exterior. It was a pickup. We were there. I think we were waiting to get into the station. We couldn't get in there until the last train, and we said, let's get an exterior. So we just put the camera on sticks, shot that, and it ended up where it did. It looked so good.
Yeah, they're in the same outfits as when they go up the escalators to leave.
Yeah, there's some brilliant stuff with things like this as well. With shortly after the Maida Vale Station, we then, when we have that whole montage, we've then got the whole gag with Mary's parents coming. And the beautiful thing is the fact that in the establishing shot of the street beforehand, you can see her parents walking up. It's such a wonderful piece of detail, which obviously when you're watching it first time round, you don't know that that's her parents, and they're only among a crowd. So it's little things like that show beautiful detail. Also, am I right that I heard somewhere that Mary's flat was awfully close to where Tom Hollander was living?
Gosh, I have no idea. Possibly. We shot that at the Golborne Road.
Yes.
The market there, just down from Trellick Tower. And I remember there was a shop that was called Hunky Doors, I think it was, and I just knocked on a load of doors. There's a hairdresser's, Hunky Doors, and it just worked well. I don't think we shot, I think we just did the walk up there. I think I got a feeling that was one of the...
Yeah, the interior was a set, right?
Yeah, it's the only set, I think.
I think it was the only set, yeah. I think it was one of them. Yeah,
and I feel like I heard something about it being the same location as Chris Marshall in Love Actually, but I might be wrong with that.
Is that the scene where they come out? Which scene is that in Love Actually? Remind me.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember where we see Chris Marshall's flat in Love Actually. Because Chris Marshall's only in it for a tiny bit, because mostly he goes off to America to meet American girls. I'll have to rewatch Love Actually at some point to find out. There's definitely a comment on it in the commentary, but whether they said that that's the location where they went for, or just one they were looking at, I don't know. So we then move. Yeah, so we then move on to, so we're at Maida Vale Station. We get we get the credit for costume designer Verity Hawkes. I mean, we talked about costume before, the fact that the costume beautifully matches the background most of the time in order to, show how everyone's at home, but in other scenes where people aren't quite that comfortable or odd ones out, their costume clashes with it. It's such, the costume design, and of course the jumpers. So shout out to Verity Hawkes.
Yeah, she made it look seamless. If you compare it, you think, okay, it's not a big costume drama or anything like that. Imagine the work that goes into it, but it looks so good, so real, and that's equally as hard to do, I believe.
And the red wedding dress was a wonderful idea because although I think it's kind of rare for a wedding scene to not go for the white dress, in that, it suddenly makes it a more memorable wedding scene because you can't get it mixed up with the other ones. Yep. You go, it's the one where she walked down to El Mondo in the red dress. You know you're picturing that and not any other film. So
yeah, no, it's striking, isn't it? It really is. And I think it was on the cover, wasn't it, of the film?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, music by Nick Lowe-Close. Beautiful music. I mean, we've got a cover of the About Time theme from Nick Lowe-Close on as the theme tune for this show. I'll cover for my Ethan O'Mahony. Shout out to you, Ethan. Yeah, the music in here is just beautiful. It is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say. I don't think we're going to have anyone come up here and we're going to go, you did a bad job. So there we go. Hair and makeup designer, Christine Blundell. Hair and makeup's not something I have much of an opinion on, but I didn't
did a
notice
bad job, but it was on purpose. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Bad fringe and the rest of it.
Oh, yeah. Casting by Fiona Ware. We've talked about her earlier. What a job. And
that last shot fades out.
We fade out. And hey, Robert, you're
great, it's Tim and Mary walking away from us. Is the last shot.
Oh, I didn't. I feel like looking at it, I hadn't even twigged that it is them.
Yep.
Yeah. How have I never realised that? I realised that's what you were saying earlier. And I wasn't really paying attention that that's what you were talking about, them in the same. Yeah. Beautiful touch there. And so, Robert, you're on visual. Would you like to read the entire credits that come up now?
The entire credits?
Yeah, come on. Let's do this.
That'll be the next episode. I'm just going to read one by one everyone involved making of the film.
Well, they all deserve a shout out, really. I'm going to quickly skim through to see if there are any names that we haven't mentioned. So all the leads are already on here, really. We've got, actually, this is a more rational order, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it works better. We talked about the fact that they're credited as Dad and Mum and not James and Mary, which I think was an interesting decision. Mary would have been confusing, admittedly, but so maybe that's why they just went with James rather than James and Mum. So then what's one of the credits we haven't had? We haven't had Ginger Jenny, Clemmy Dugdale, Rupert, Harry Haddon Patton. Rupert, we've talked a lot about how wonderfully hateable he is, which is a compliment to Harry Haddon Patton, because I assume that's what he was supposed to be doing. We then got Mary's father, Fit, Mitchell Mullen, Mary's mother, Jean, Lisa Acorn, and Polly, Jenny Rainsford. Yeah, sorry, Steve, won't be too long on this.
Okay.
There we go. I won't do this with all the crew, but considering we've probably talked about everyone who's credited in this, it's probably worth giving them their names. Polly, we talked quite a bit about. Mm-hmm. Jenny Rainsford, Auntie May, Natasha Powell. Dans Le Noir, Maitre D is Mark Healy, and there's the Dans Le Noir waiter. It's surprisingly harder to say than I thought. Dans Le Noir waiter.
Did you work out where that location was?
Yeah.
It's not, you did,
It's not the real restaurant, yeah. It was some waffle place.
It was a sort of, it was called Pit Q, if I remember rightly. Just off of Carnaby Street. Just on the corner there. It was lovely. I don't think it's there anymore. I think it's something else.
No.
I think it's a waffle place now, exactly, yeah.
I think one of the actual waiters from the real Don Lenoir is in the film.
Yeah. Yes, you're correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay, because we were trying to figure him out, weren't we? And then I did research a couple of weeks later. I was watching a video about it, and the guy who played Carlo, and I can't remember what his real name was, but he was on there, and he did a good job. Theatre Deserter, Ben Benson. Theatre Judge, Philip Voss. Prompter, Tom Godwin. Batty QC, Pal Aaron. I don't know what Batty QC is, but I'm sure.
What's a QC?
Someone from the court, one of the judges, or in the offices, probably the court, Lincoln's Inn.
Okay, that makes sense. Incidentally, at this point, we don't get the credits for Richard E. Grant or Richard.
No, they get thanked at the end.
Yeah, they get thanked later on, which I assume is a contractual thing again. Richard Griffiths. I forgot the Griffiths surname for a second.
I think that's actually them avoiding a contractual thing.
Yeah.
If they're under contract, they're going to get paid more.
No. Tina is Catherine Steedman. Wedding priest Andrew Martin Yates. Am I right that was the actual priest as well from the church?
From the church? Absolutely, yeah. Yep. Yeah, he was, I'm pretty sure he was I think he could have been in Keeping Mum as well, if I remember rightly. At some point doing something. He wasn't obviously vicar, that was, what's his name?
Rowan Atkinson, yeah.
Rowan Atkinson, yeah. I'm sure he was in it. Yeah. But yeah, that is the real priest from, St. Michael Pinkever.
Posey Newborn, Charlie Bournes. Posey 6 months, Verity Fullerton. Posey 1 year, Veronica Owens. Yeah, you realising this was a bad mistake of me to go through the whole thing, Robert.
Yeah.
I will do honourable mentions with all the rest of the crew and try and give shouts to the other ones, but I just think we've probably talked about a lot of the cast and not named them, so now's the chance. Posey 2.5 to 3 years, Olivia Compton. Posey 5 years, Sarah Heller. Boy Posey, what? I don't know why I didn't question what that character would be named as, but there we go. Boy Posey, Jaden Dervish. Jeff, newborn. Jeff, a name which isn't given in the film whatsoever.
Right.
Discredited. Which you talked as well. So we got Jeff newborn, Jacob Francis. Jeff 5 months, Jago Freud, which I assume is of some relation to Richard and Emma.
Yeah, I think so.
Jeff 2 years, Ollie Phillip. Joe 6 months, Sophie Pond, and Joe 1 year, Sophie Brown. Trudy, the party guest, is Molly Seymour. The flirty girl is Matilda Sturridge. John? Who's John? I mean, I guess John could be the person that the flirty girl at the party is waving at, maybe?
Maybe. They don't say a name for him, but that could be.
Tom Staunton feels like a familiar name. Maybe that's just because that was one of the extras that we were researching.
Yeah, well, there was a location manager, a friend of mine called Tom Staunton. When I saw it, I was like, oh, sure that wasn't Tom, but no, it's not. I don't think so.
So we've got Pret-a-Manger server is, oh hang on, my minute has played itself off. Pret-a-Manger server is Rebecca Chu. The court clerk is John West. Judge is Graham Richard Haugago, maybe, I don't know, apologies for anyone with their names. On here we've got Jerry Foreman is Kerry Lane. Studholme, defendant is Ken Hazeldine. Jazz singer is Barbara Goff. And the busker is John Bowden. There we go, we're done. And we talked about John Bowden and Rellerhead, and yeah, so one of the questions that we tend to give all the guests on this show, Steve, is if you could go back in time to any moment in your life to either relive or change something about it, what moment in your life would you choose?
Wow. I think it just has to be the birth of my son. I think it was, I was too nervous to really enjoy it. Bless you. Changing it, I think I'll just relax a bit and just enjoy it, because people give birth all over the world every second of the day, but when it's yours, you become a bit stressed. That's it. Nothing else, I don't think. Just to relax, enjoy it a bit more.
Any concluding thoughts on what your experiences were on this film then, Steve?
I think it's quite nice to relive it again, because often you finish a film and then you've already picked up the script for the next one, and you just watch it on TV a few times, or, you know, it's quite nice to go through it and relive it. And actually, I mean, I watched the film again, but thought about it in a different way, tried to remember, you know, the days that we were there. I remember going to the Olympics in the middle of it. Yeah, no, I think it's a film that will be around for a long time, and people, you know, the more you watch it, I think you see bits in it that maybe you missed at the start. I think it's a really, you know, that it's become a cult film. It's hard not to like it, I think. Very hard, you know. It's
the film equivalent of a warm hug, basically.
Yeah.
It's the comfort, and I think it's what, I've said this a few times, I think it's, in the current climate with all this negative stuff going on, is what we need. People don't want big, deep dramas. People want a film that makes them appreciate the importance of life. And
absolutely agreed. I couldn't work out that Contagion sort of went to number one for a while in the Netflix. I mean, that people felt that they had to watch that.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to watch it, you know, because I noticed it was at number one in the Netflix.
Yeah.
So I put it on. After the first 10 minutes, I turned it off. I thought, I do not want to watch this now. I want to watch About Time.
Yeah. I think that has been, I mean, admittedly, I'm a sort of person who rewatches films quite a lot. So, like, with About Time, before I knew we were doing the show, I think it was the 3rd of March, I watched it on my phone because I was on the way to London on a coach journey. I already rewatched it since, obviously, through this show, we've watched things in depth the other week, just so obviously, when we'd nearly covered the whole thing, knowing the entire film inside out, basically each shot, each line, it still made me cry. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. So, Steve, where can our listeners find you on social media?
SM Locations. I just have Instagram and a website. That's about it, really. Nothing too involved. Maybe Steve Mortimore Locations on Instagram.
Steve _Mortimore _
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you to Lindsay Cosford, who's been my assistant for 10 years and on this film, and you know, she plays a huge part in organising everything with me.
Brilliant. And Robert, where can our listeners find you?
Robert E.G. Black on social media, or lemmingdrops.com for links.
Listeners can find me on Twitter at llama_bottle0, Instagram Ginger Luke, Facebook Luke Allen Film. All podcasts, radio prints, newspaper articles, short films, anything I'm remotely involved in is at lukeallen.co.uk. This show's on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at 2 Minutes About Time. They can also find us on IMDb, 2 Minutes About Time. They can join our Facebook group, The Cupboard, to discuss all things to do with About Time, the podcast and anything else. And we tend to end each episode with an interesting or random way of saying goodbye. So Steve, do you have any preferred way of saying goodbye to people or any odd, silly things that you like to say?
Gosh, you've caught me there off guard. Give an example.
We've had anything from Toodle Pip to, what was it like? I'm off like a dirty shirt. There's been some weird ones.
See ya.
The 2 Minutes About Time theme is performed by Ethan O'Mahony and is a cover of the About Time theme originally composed by Nick Laird-Close. 2 Minutes About Time is a production of Lemming Drop Studios in association with Bottle O Productions.